How's it going, Pink Pirates crew? It's Adrian and we're back with another video. So I'm super excited to say that I'm bringing a video series to you guys where we're focusing on how to improve on the game and how to improve your fundamentals specifically. So this set of videos isn't going to teach you like specific matchups or a specific meta, but I wanted to create something that you could kind of go back to and always refer to. Every episode is going to be focusing on, taking almost a deep dive into the game's mechanics and what can we learn from them, how do we build up the fundamentals that surround them. This video is going to be a little bit different than the rest of the videos that I'm planning on doing. The rest of the videos, again, are just going to be going into like specific game mechanics like playing on curve, resource management, all of that jazz. But for this video, I wanted to kind of like lay a groundwork on how to improve in general. So if you're a player right now that wants to improve and you don't really know where to start, this is going to be 100% the video for you. So without further ado, let's get right into the video, starting off with my number one rule. So my number one rule to improvement is always to just be a student of the game. I don't know where I got this from, like if I just came up with this like off the dome or if someone told me this at locals. If you're the one who told me at locals, please let me know. But I really love this term, being a student of the game, because you really should be, always learning and always kind of seeking out advice and also taking all the knowledge that you can get and using it to your advantage. But what does this phrase actually mean and how can we put it into practice? So the first point I want to get out of the way, it might make a couple people or a few people mad, but I'm gonna say it. I've played a lot of other card games and fighting games in the past, and there was always this term scrub mentality that I liked to use. And what I mean by this is basically that mindset that you're in where you're like, oh, if I only just drew this one card that would have saved me. If he didn't trigger this, then I would have won. Things like that I feel like are pretty reductive to your improvement. I think in the moment, it's definitely okay to feel those emotions, to feel like robbed from a trigger or from like a really good card like 10 cost Big Mom or something like that. But at the end of the day, if you really want to improve at this game, you are going to have to completely stray away from using those as excuses to why you aren't winning tournaments or like winning locals. It's preventing you from improving because instead of analyzing what you could have done differently throughout the game, you're pinpointing one specific thing or one specific aspect and saying that you just lost because of it. And the reality of it is you probably didn't just lose to that one thing. And I completely understand there are bad matchups, there are strong cards that are out, right? You might feel like a card needs to be banned. And even if that's the case, until, Bandai actually bans the card, until you could find something to deal with that bad matchup, that's just stuff that you have to deal with. And that's like the main point I wanted to get across. If you're one of those people that kind of finds themselves being put in situations where you think to yourself, wow, I brick every single game, or like, wow, like this deck is not good. There are so many other decisions like deck building, or maybe your mulligan wasn't correct. Maybe you didn't have the right philosophy for mulliganing. Because if every single game that you lose is because of some exterior factor, how are you ever going to improve at the game? So now the next thing you wonder is, I'm never in the scrub mentality, or, I'm trying to get away from it. What do I do next? And I think this next point is going to be kind of the core and the glue that holds everything together. Whether you win or you lose a game, I want you guys to analyze why you won or why you lost the game. I feel like analyzing your mistakes is something that a lot of people do. I don't really have to tell you to do that. But I feel like people forget this other side of it, where if you won, especially if it's like a matchup you're struggling with or something like a mirror match, you really need to understand the steps that it took you for you to win that game. And this is so important. Understanding your win conditions for each matchup is extremely crucial, and I don't see too many players doing that often, and I feel like you're missing out on almost half of the knowledge and information that you can gain from playing these games. So obviously when you lose, you want to be thinking about turn by turn, what are the decisions that led up to that loss? Again, stray away from I lost because my opponent played 10 Mom, I lost because of this trigger, I lost because I didn't draw this card. Instead, kind of shift your frame of reference. If you could have, what could you have done differently in those turns? What did your opponent do that made you feel uncomfortable in those situations? And then also, even if you win, and even if it's like a steamroll, did you win because your opponent made a mistake? Or did you win because you found like a very valid strategy that you have never seen before? Again, I especially recommend this in matchups where you have like a losing matchup and also in mirror matches, especially when analyzing mirror matches, because if you could consistently win those while playing a meta deck, you are so golden. So just please, after you win or lose a game, go and analyze it. I know I've talked to some people at locals about this, but I used to like write down notes after every locals, kind of outlining everything. Like for example, I was playing Law during this, so my first win was against the Nami player, and I basically just wrote, nothing really to say about this matchup. I was able to go wide and swing magic numbers, and then I was also able to swing a lot of 9Ks. Even writing down something like that is super useful, because what if down the road I play against like another Nami player and it was better to swing tall? That might not be the case, but just gathering data like this and being able to look back on it is super, super important. I even write about like a Law v Kata game where I say, there's really nothing to say about this game, but I was able to clear board with Otama and swing wide. My life was perfect to where I could not get burned by 10. So basically, I was able to take all my life before 10 Mom even came out. And I say there's nothing to say there, but that's a lot of good information. So I definitely recommend this. You don't have to do it to this extent. I've started to do it just like on my notes app on my phone. I can't show you that one because I'm using my phone, but that's definitely something I recommend. Having notes that you could kind of go back to is super important. Also, this is like the perfect segue to go into my next point, which is ask your opponent questions. Again, I feel like it's super common for people to ask their opponent questions when they make mistakes or if they lose. You'll ask, what was your last card in hand? Or did you have enough counter for this swing if I swung this way? And that's really great, but you're also missing another side of it. It might sound like a little bit BM to do, but I highly recommend asking them questions even if you've won the game. Obviously, if they're like really salty or that they're gonna react a certain way, don't do this. But for the most part, everyone in my locals community is really chill. And if I ask them a question like, hey, on turn 2, I played Borsalino, would you have been more uncomfortable if I played Kuzan? Like 99 times out of 100, they're going to answer you and they're gonna know that game state. It's so important to ask your opponent questions, especially after the game, because they are the only person in the entire world that knows exactly what cards they had in hand, that knows the exact game state that they were in, and that knows what you're talking about in general. There are so many times where I run a certain game state by one of my friends, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what I would do there because I don't have the info. But you know who has that info? Your opponent. It's super important because it's really, really great to have different perspectives on the game. If you're constantly asking one of your friends what their perspective on a game state that they didn't play is, you're going to get kind of a lukewarm answer and maybe not even the correct one. So please, I do this all the time. I was doing this to random people at Nats. It might seem like something that's a little BM, but I feel like if you're coming from a place of honesty, again, 99 times out of 100, they are not going to mind. And this goes into my last point, which I'm going to focus on near the end of the video because I kind of really want to talk about this, but please find a testing group. If you have people that you can consistently bounce ideas off of and just discuss about the game, that's really going to elevate and accelerate your improvement. I can't tell you how many people I've seen at locals just get really good out of nowhere just because they started talking to more players about the plays that they're doing. And I can't tell you how better of a player that I've gotten and kind of maintained my skills by talking to people at locals, discussing what their ideas were, and kind of adding that to my repertoire. So again, I'm not going to touch on why this is so important right now. I'm going to do that towards the end of the video. But for right now, I want to focus on kind of what this path to improvement looks like. All right, so I just dumped a ton of info and opinions on you. And now you're wondering, how do I apply this? What does this look like in practice? And you might feel really lost right now, so I'm gonna kind of walk through what this path kind of looks like, and you might be a little bit lost, so we'll kind of just walk through what this looks like as a routine, what this can look like for you. All right, so on your path of improvement, you gotta know how to play the game. Obviously, this is a card game. Learn the rules, know how to play. Once you learn the rules, once you learn the basics, can kind of go through a game. Now that's where you start playing and practicing. This is where I think a lot of players focus on. They think this is the most important thing, but I'd actually argue that it's not. And we'll get into why later, but it still is very, very important to practice, to know your combos, to kind of understand the matchups between you and another specific deck. But I'm telling you right now, if you just practice and play games just over and over again, you are not going to get that much better. At the start, by playing games, you're gonna see like this really, really sharp improvement by playing games. But then once you reach like the top, which is like basically you know the meta, you kind of know in general what the matchups are, you know what every card does, you're gonna see your improvement like kind of plateau a little bit. And I feel like a lot of players can get super frustrated that they're in this position because it feels like you're not improving, but you're putting in the hours to improve and you're still not getting anywhere. And it's mainly because you are not focusing on the next step of improvement. And the next step is obviously analyzing play. And I say analyzing plays and not just mistakes, because again, we want to know what different plays are winning us and losing us the game. I would watch YouTube videos of people that play the game in the background and I would analyze, why did he do this play? And then after a while, you start to understand what plays are good and what plays are bad, and you could almost understand like the flow of the game, right? You understand tempo swings, you understand the back and forth, the kind of like seesaw fight that's going on. And then I feel like a lot of players skip over this part, or they only participate in this part when they lose and they want to know their mistakes. This analysis should be going on as much as you possibly can. If you can evaluate every single game, have some like document or recording, or I'd write it down in my notebook, you should definitely do that and analyze your plays on a turn-by-turn basis. I can't tell you how many times I've come up with like 3 different ways to win on a turn where I just completely lost. And then on the flip side, even if I win, I start thinking about, if I played the other plays that were in my hand, does that give me more tempo? What options does that give my opponent to do? What kind of happens based off of the cards that I saw in their hand? And that's super important to do. Again, this kind of dual win or loss, analyze your play. And I hear this from players all the time. Like, I learned so much from losing. I love losing. But at the end of the day, we don't want to lose, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't have to learn from our wins. We should always be analyzing win or loss. And the good thing about this is this completes kind of a cycle. You could go back and forth between these two things forever and improve. And I think most intermediate and like advanced players, they do this cycle, and it's a great way to improve. But I'm also here to tell you that there is another avenue that you can use to get better at the game. And that avenue is getting other people's opinions. And I don't just mean this in a way where you're talking to other people, right? If you're watching like a gameplay video of 2 people playing at locals, that is getting another person's opinion, right? Because you're looking at it through the lens of 2 players that aren't you. So when they do a play that you agree with, you kind of, that's reassuring to you. When they do a play that's different, you want to analyze why you would have done a different play. And I think that's why I've been gravitating towards, I love the CS videos because you get to see like almost every card in their hand. And then I also love the POV videos at locals. Shout out to like Kuro TCG. It's super useful to be able to like almost be in the point of view of the other player, because you get to see every card in their hand and you could kind of see the thought process that they go by. But of course, other than that, this also can go into just like talking to people at locals, getting their opinions, finding a test group. And then this is also a cyclical thing that can happen. And what's funny is that this can happen separately from practicing. So there's kind of 2 sides of analysis that you can take from, right? You could take from your own practice, and you could take from other people's experiences and other people's ideas, and you could analyze both of them and get a super, super efficient way of improving. By not only practicing and like watching other people play and taking in their opinions, and then also analyzing winning or losing plays, you're going to be able to just suck in all this info like a sponge. And all that knowledge that you're getting from analyzing this stuff is going to put you way over the edge of your competition. And then of course, after you get people's opinions, you could always circle back to like putting them into practice, using them for yourself, seeing if you like them or not, and it kind of just like completes this dual-sided cycle. And this is why I think finding a testing group is so important, because if you are in some sort of testing group, or even if you have like someone else or like a testing partner, you're going to be doing all of these things pretty much subconsciously. By talking about the game with another person, you're going to be actively participating in analysis. This might also bleed into yourself just practicing. You're going to find yourself going in this cycle naturally. You don't even have to think about it. And then a lot of this stuff will come natural to you over time. That is like the basic idea of like this path to improvement. This isn't even just for like playing One Piece. This is pretty much for like anything that you do, right? So hopefully that's enough. To give you like a groundwork of where to start if you want to improve. Again, if you guys have like any questions, just put them down in the comments. I'm always looking at them and I'm gonna answer them as much as I can. So I hope you guys found these tips useful in kind of laying a groundwork, a foundation for improvement. Next week, we're gonna be starting to actually dive into the basic mechanics of the game and kind of dissecting them to see what we can learn. The next video is going to be talking about, playing on curve. What does that mean? What can we learn from it? It sounds simple, but I promise you it gets really complex when you come down to it. But if you liked this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe, do anything. I do want to make a full comeback to YouTube, but at the end of the day, I am really busy, but what really keeps me going is that support from you guys. But that's all I got for you today, so I'm gonna wish you luck on whatever you're doing, whether that be work, school, or whatever, and I'll see you on the next one.